Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge, and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. This is week 8 of Fort Worth 148's podcast. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary.
Grant Gates, Master Mason and current Tyler, 148.
Gabriel Jagush, Master Mason with 148.
Well, boys, it's good to be back again. I'm starting to look forward to my Wednesday nights.
Nice.
Absolutely. Glad to be here, guys. I hope y'all have had a good, productive week. I know it's been a productive week on my end, so life is bueno.
Yep. So let's get right into news.
Let's do it.
So I went to a chapter stated meeting last night, and I was informed Brother George Malcolm Field Jr. has laid down his working tools. He passed away on Tuesday, March 14th. He was the great-grandson of Julian Field, the first worshipful master of Fort Worth Lodge. Brother George was a past master of Julian Field Lodge 908 here in Fort Worth. He was also a member of Texas Chapter, Texas Council, and Worth Commandery. Brother George was 95 at the time of his passing, and our hearts and prayers go out to his family at this time. So, that's...
Are there any details on the service, by chance?
No, I didn't get any details on the service, unfortunately. But I can ask. I can ask around and see if we can get it.
We can probably Google it too.
But this also happened on March 14th, so it's been a while. But I only just found out. So
Gotcha.
In national news, there's been an incident at Fort Collins in Colorado. The Masonic Temple in Fort Collins has been vandalized. Black spray paint has been used to graffiti on the steps and pillars of the building's front. The pillars were defaced with upside-down crosses, and the steps have had the phrase, "Great Tribulation is at hand," sprayed on them. Police are currently investigating this as a hate crime. So...
What?
Yeah.
Some people just need to get a job or something.
Man, that's just taking it too far.
Yeah, but at least I like that the police are investigating it as a hate crime, because that seems valid.
Yeah, that is true.
There seems to be a religious component to that. So
yeah, I noticed in the article
definitely.
They referred to the Masonic Lodge as a religious building. I found that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily wrong, strictly speaking.
It is a sacred area, so yeah.
Yeah, it's.
So what did it say? The Great Tribulation?
The Great Tribulation is at hand, and that was graffitied on the steps.
Oh, I just Googled that. Did you know that is mentioned as the sign of the end of times?
Yes.
I did not know that.
It's a little bit revelation-y over there.
Then it's definitely a hate crime, because they brought religion into it, you know. Yeah.
But in more positive news, there's been a neat discovery abroad. There have been the title of the article from National Geographic is "Found Fresh Clues to the Mystery of King Solomon's Mines." So this you'll get a kick out of this. They found 3,000-year-old manure in the Timnah Valley of Israel, and this was discovered during a excavation of an ancient mining camp. And so previously, they'd seen these several wall structures there, and they even had like a gate that was fortified and everything. So there was, something was going on there. Eventually they figured out that it was an ancient mining camp, and previously they thought that this was a late Bronze Age. So we're thinking New Kingdom of Egypt, 13th century BC, that kind of thing. Not the right period for King Solomon. But the carbon dating on the manure shows that it's not a Bronze Age site. It's not a 13th century BC site. It's a 10th century BC site, which was historically the time of King David and King Solomon. So that's kind of neat to see. And another thing that they noticed was that there was an industrial level of copper production at the site. And along with the seeds and pollen that they found in the dung, that showed some of these seeds and pollen were found hundreds of miles away. One of them was found 100 miles away. The other one was found like 250 miles away. I can't remember. And so that, they think, points towards a large-scale, long-distance trade arrangement of some kind.
Oh, man, they can tell that from some poo.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
It was in the manure, man.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
So that's some
crazy.
interesting BS for you guys. So
That
I'm
is
not proud
cool.
of that one.
That was solid, dude.
So, yeah, and so moving on to questions, because we're light on news today. There is a question that I saw on the internet, which I liked quite a bit, and the title of the post was Instituting a Zeroth Degree. What if we created a degree that was open to any and everyone? Something conferred in an open lodge that explains a bit about the history and function of the fraternity with a bit of ritualistic flair. And so this is posted by Cowan No More on the Freemasonry subreddit. And so he talks about like maybe calling it a friend of the craft degree, something that's all plain text. There's no actual secrets being given. So, he's asking, like, what would that look like? Is there a voluntary hoodwink? Is there an exemplar candidate? Are we talking maybe like everyday working tools like pen, paper, cell phones, cars, that kind of thing? What are your takes on that? Maybe like the idea of an open degree that anybody can take.
I mean, that's kind of similar to what the installation ceremony is all about, which, I don't necessarily have a problem with that being public, but the older I get, the more I lean towards it being a brother thing. Because if you want to know what goes on in there, join.
Yeah.
The fact that we're trying to, I don't know the right word to use, market ourselves in such a way that we're kind of, saying, hey, we need more members. That's something I'm not cool. I'm like, eh.
I'm not really on the we need more members train, but
yeah, I don't think any of us are on the membership is the issue bandwagon. I think for people,
here come our expulsion letters from Grand Lodge.
Yeah, here we go. I think in the long run, I think it's going to decrease the value in the entered apprentice degree if you went with something like that.
That's a very good point.
Part of your entered apprentice experience is you're effectively taking a step off a cliff, and you're building the trust that you build with your brethren in your lodge through the entered apprentice degree. It would be diminished because you're not really trusting them in that first step that you're taking. Yeah. You are you want a little baby step. You want to feel good about it. I want to make sure that someone's going to hold my hand. No,
that's not allowed.
Now, what it would look like, to me, it would look. I think you would start at the where we are, the 300-year mark, and then give a brief history of the Masonic ritual. Maybe show them see the officers in their jewels, and kind of give them an idea what the lodge room looks like, and discuss the history and what we're doing today.
And that's essentially the open house. I mean,
we
do that during the open house, and I know some people that are against the idea of even showing the room to non-initiates, and I get the argument for that. One of the things you touched on it, the idea of trust. We've had that conversation very recently. The idea of caring for people through stewardship. You can't be a steward to somebody and care for them unless they trust you. So that's totally different discussion, though. But somebody pointed out in the comments of that post, Our 0th degree is the Masonic Memorial Service. The desire to join has been formed for the first time in many Masons by watching a group of men honor and respect their relative at the side of a casket. So I think that's a kind of a cool take on it. The 0th degree is the funeral, because everybody gets to see that. But the open house, I think, is probably the best exemplification of some sort of introduction.
Well, and I don't know if you've seen an installation ceremony, but it goes through each office and publicly, what their duties are, what they do, from the stewards on up to the worshipful master. And it's a pretty in-depth look at what Masonry is all about as far as the roles the officers play in it. Mm. And, it used to be, it wasn't a public ceremony, but somewhere along the way it became one. So it's a real good look into what we do as well.
Not necessarily a public ceremony, but did you know that the master's degree used to be open to all Masons? In the early days of the English Grand Lodges, the master's degree, or what we now call the master's degree, was conferred as a past master's degree, because at the time there was only one degree. And so what we called the 3rd degree was something that they conferred at past masters, and anybody could go watch that. Anybody in lodge. You didn't have to be the master of the lodge. So I thought that was kind of an interesting fact. It's not really related, but... So...
What else you got?
There's a question posted to the Texas Freemasons Facebook page by Brother Robert Marshall of Waco Lodge. And his question is, then this was just a general open question, but I wanted you all's take on it. Which of your lodge's committees do you think have been most important to improving the lodge as a whole, and why?
Oh, man. For me, that's a toss-up between mentor committee and degree teams. I would lean more towards the degree teams, though, because we didn't have a mentor committee on paper up until recently.
Right.
But we've been doing good degrees.
I mean, my immediate answer is it would be degree team. That would be my snap answer. Would be, the degree team has been that for us. The other place to consider is your group that handles your finances. If they handle your finances correctly, your lodge is able to thrive. So, we don't want to forget about the guys down there doing the dirty work with math to make sure that the lodge stays open. So I think that has a big impact on what we do as well.
Yeah, a well-run wallet can make or break a lodge. That's a pretty good point.
Yeah.
This isn't a standing committee by any means, but the individual investigation committees, I think, have made a pretty big difference. I mean, I haven't been in lodge for a very long time, but I've noticed that people who I've talked with about the investigation committees that went to visit them have had very positive experiences, and that was a great introduction to the whole process for them.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because that's where it all starts. Yeah. You got to vet these guys right. So yeah, I might change my answer to that.
I'm still going with degree team, Rhit. I'll stay over here on the island. I'll go to degree team.
Yeah, well, I didn't mention degree team just because I'm already super inherently biased towards that as an answer. So
yeah,
I'm just trying to play fair, because my answer is degree team, but I wanted to think of something else, maybe, not be so on track, because that's almost always going to be my answer.
Yeah. So better ritual.
Let's talk about today's subject. Today is alternative fraternal organizations. So what do we mean by alternative fraternal organizations, Rhit?
That I have no idea what I'm talking about.
You're not wrong.
Well, since this was kind of my brainchild, what I wanted to talk about is often when you're out in public and someone sees the bumper sticker or the lapel pin, they'll go, "Oh, you're a Mason." My dad is involved in a Masonic fraternity called the Elks Lodge, or my dad is involved in he's an odd fellow. Do you got, what Masonic organization is that? So there's a lot of confusion out there, even amongst Masons, because you had there were confusion about what is an independent body of Freemasonry and what is not. So I thought it would be good to talk about some other organizations out there doing great work that aren't necessarily Masonic, and compare them to our craft in our fraternity.
Yeah, I was talking about this. I was visiting another lodge, and I was mentioning. I mentioned Oddfellows and how I was really interested in it, and somebody told me, "Well, yeah, they are really interesting, but you can't join them because they're clandestine and it's a Masonic offense." And I'm going, nope. So yeah, you're right. Even among Masons, it's there's a lot of non-knowledge. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So not that we're the expert on any of these groups. I'm sure we will probably get some of this wrong. But again, thought it would be an interesting topic for us to go over. So
my goal is to discuss this well enough that we offend the least amount of people involved in these organizations as possible.
My goal is to offend the most amount of people so that they download the podcast to be offended.
So you're going for, well, I'm not going to specify any political personalities.
I got the CNN disorder, guys. I'm just going to try to make everybody mad.
So one of the reasons why I thought, you expounded, and we talked about this, that, people don't know what these groups are, even within Masonry, people don't understand the other fraternal organizations. And something that, I wanted to kind of throw out there is that I know that not all of our listeners are Masons. And if Masonry isn't right for you, or you want to go do something else, then maybe we can interest you in one of these organizations. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but if you find something inspiring in the organizations that we talk about today, then by all means go investigate them and check them out and maybe even join them, And hey, if you are a Mason and you're interested in joining something else as well, go check it out. So
sure.
This is not just one party.
Most fraternal organizations are struggling for members. That's a issue that is not isolated to Freemasonry. So yeah, if you hear something that piques your interest and sounds like it might be a good fit for you, go run it down. You can't hurt yourself by doing that. You probably want to check with your Grand Lodge to make sure your Grand Lodge doesn't consider them clandestine. But
and I think the vast majority of these are totally fine for Masons to join. There's one that we're going to discuss today that Masonry is fine with you joining, but they might not be fine with you being a Mason. So, but
all right.
Yeah. So, Grant, you want to start us off on one of your organizations?
Sure. So the one that piqued my interest and kind of started all of this is the Knights of Pythias. The Knights of Pythias is a fraternal organization and secret society founded in Washington, D.C. on February 19th of 1864. Their logos are very similar to ours, and actually kind of how I got there was I was at the car wash and I saw a logo that was very similar to a Scottish Rite logo. So I asked the gentleman whose car it was, if he traveled, see if I could fire up a little conversation and burn some time. And he said, "Oh, no, I'm in the Knights of Pythias." And I said to myself, "Well, what is that?" So started me down the rabbit hole, and here we are. So Knights of Pythias was the first fraternal organization to receive a charter under the Act of the United States Congress. After the Civil War in 1864, they had founded their organization based on the ideas of loyalty, honor, and friendship. the organization to date has over 2,000 lodges.
Wow.
In the United States, a membership over 50,000 at 2003. Now, this is Wikipedia, so take it for what it's worth. Okay, those are the numbers that Wikipedia gives us. All right. There are a lot of similarities to Freemasonry from Pythias.org. There's a quote from Abraham Lincoln that I found really interesting, and I think will really kind of set out what this organization is about. All right, so this is a quote from Abraham Lincoln, and please bear with me while we read through it. The purposes of your organization are most wonderful. If we could but bring its spirit to all our citizenry, what a wonderful thing it would be. It breathes the spirit of friendship, charity, and benevolence. It is one of the best agencies conceived for upholding of government, honoring the flag, and for the reuniting of our brethren of the North and of the South, for teaching people to love one another and portraying the sanctity of the home and loved ones. I would suggest that these great principles by perpetrated and that you go to the Congress of the United States and ask for a charter, and so organize on a great scale throughout this nation and disseminate this wonderful work that you have so nobly started. I will do all in my power to assist you in this application and with your work. So at that point, that's when the charter was, right around that time, that's when the charter was adopted by the U.S. Congress, and the Knights of Pythias began. So it's a fraternal organization very similar to our own in some of their work. Some notable differences: the Knights of Pythias use ceremonial swords. Early in the history of the group, a man was actually given a sword when he was inducted into the Knights of Pythias. Today, most lodges have swords available for their ceremonial work, or members are required to bring their own swords. Okay. Most swords are inscribed with FCB, friendship, charity, and benevolence, which we find very similar to faith, hope, and charity in the Masonic orders. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are the requirements to be a member of the Knights of Pythias are actually quite similar to our own. A member must be at least 18 years of age, not be a professional gambler or involved with illegal drugs or alcohol, and he must have a belief in a supreme being. Okay.
So you can't own a beer company and be a Knights of Pythias?
Yeah. Effectively.
That's pretty specific.
And if you think back to when the organization was formed, alcoholism was rampant in the days after the Civil War. So it was likely to encourage, people to get sober to be a member. So that's kind of what I took from that is likely it was, due to the times that they were formed, that came about. So I thought that was an interesting point, different from ours, that you cannot be a professional gambler or involved with illegal drugs or alcohol. So that was neat.
Temperance, if you will.
Temperance, exactly. So a lot of similarities between the two organizations. Their oath is actually public. If you guys want to hear their oath for review, anyone interested?
Sure. Bring it
Okay.
on.
All right. So the oath taken by the members. I declare upon my honor that I believe in a supreme being, that I am not a professional gambler or unlawfully engaged in the wholesale or retail sale of intoxicating liquors or narcotics, and that I believe in the maintenance of the order and of upholding constitutional authority in the government in which I live. Moreover, I declare upon my honor that I am not a communist or fascist, and that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the country of which I am a citizen by force or violence or any other unlawful means, and that I do not seek by force or violence to deny other persons their rights under the law of such country. So we see some similarities there. It's very heavy on the oath towards the government, which is
peaceable subject and all that.
Peaceable subject, but very. I mean, how many times?
They're a little more specific.
Yeah, how many times is that mentioned? Hold on.
Well, they actually the thing that I thought was interesting is that they mentioned, you know, they're anti-communist and anti-fascist, which I can totally get down with. You know, very American. You know,
cool if you're socialist, just not fast.
You're not full blown communist. It's okay.
That's a pretty tight distinction, but good to go. So. A very interesting organization. They have 3 degrees: the page degree, the esquire degree, and the knight degree.
Okay.
There's an optional 4th degree called the endowment rank, which provides, or did provide at one point, fraternal insurance benefits. So this actually split off later into a mutual life insurance company, which is now known as the American United Insurance Company. So through their work, they actually established a business. I don't know if that group, you know, donates to the Knights of Pythias today or anything like that. But some interesting side notes about the fraternity itself. So that is the Knights of Pythias. As it pertains,
well, it's pretty interesting. I think something else that is good for, you know, as far as Masons who, because I've never heard of the Knights of Pythias. And, you know, it took me a while before I figured out what the Knights of Columbus were. And I'd hear a lot of jokes or whatever about how we didn't get along and had no idea. So I think this is good for, you know, everybody to kind of get a gist of all these organizations that we cover, you know, so when you hear them in passing conversation, it won't be code.
Yes.
Masonic jargon.
Exactly. So that's one of the things I kind of want to cover is not every fraternal organization is some sort of Masonic jargon, gentlemen.
Yeah.
The Knights of Pythias are not on any sort of clandestine list that I could locate. So, you know, you don't have to tighten up and run away if you meet a member of that fraternity. Reading their oath and kind of what they're out there doing, seem like a good group of guys. Probably.
And as long as you don't tell them your secrets and they don't tell you your secrets, all's good.
You're good. You're good to
go. Don't ever clam up, even if you know it's a clandestine Mason. Be a Mason.
Yeah, well, right. And that's one of the things that, and I know we keep bringing, you know, I know the point of tonight is not really clandestine Masonry, but something I think that a lot of times we forget in discussion is that you don't have to be a regular Mason, and you don't have to be a Mason at all just to be a good, decent human being. So
exactly.
Yes.
Nobody's forbidden you from getting along with other human beings.
Right. Another thing of note that I had down here that is similar to what we do, the Pythias, the Order provides for worthy Pythians in distress. It runs camps for underprivileged youth, homes for aged members. It sponsors scholarship funds, blood drives, highway safety programs, and the Cystic Fibrosis Research Foundation. So those guys are out there doing work. Just like we are. So not necessarily, you know, exactly how Masons have done it, but it seems like a pretty worthy organization, guys. So, yeah, absolutely.
Now that you've mentioned them, you know, we'll lead into the Knights of Columbus. Now, they're the organization that I mentioned that while Masonry is cool with you being a Knight of Columbus, the Knights of Columbus may not, depending on the group, may not necessarily be cool with you being a Mason. Why is that, you ask? Well, they are the largest Catholic fraternal organization in the world, so there's a little bit there. So their motto is "In service to one, in service to all," and they've been around for 135 years. In order to join as a member, you must be Catholic, you must be a man, and you must be over the age of 18. Their logo or emblem or whatever is it's like a Forme. They call it a Forme cross, but it's like a square-shaped cross that has a shield on top of it, and it's got K of C on top, and it's got three things crossed on the shield. There's a dagger, an anchor, and a fasces on top of it. And the fasces is a hatchet wrapped in a bundle of sticks.
Wow.
Yeah. They were founded in 1882 by a Catholic priest, Father Michael McGivney, in Connecticut. And he was originally inspired by the need to take care of widows and orphans in immigrant communities, because once the bread earner died, then they were toast. So he saw a need that needed to be filled, and he saw some of those fraternal organizations that were providing something like that. Additionally, one of his goals was to provide a support structure for Catholics who, in the 1800s, were super ostracized by American society, and that carried well into the 1900s. And additionally, he figured it could be a good alternative for Catholics to Masonry, due to the papal prohibition for Catholics to be Masons. The namesake of the organization is Christopher Columbus, and the motivation behind that is that as a hope that one day Catholics wouldn't be treated the way they were currently being treated, and as a reminder to both Catholics and Protestants that Catholics were a very key part in the birth of the United States. So in the early 20th century, there was a oath hoax that was circulated. It was part of an anti-Catholic prejudice campaign. The people began circulating an old oath that was previously also falsely attributed to the Jesuits. And this oath, fabricated oath, mind you, was circulated primarily by the Ku Klux Klan, because in addition to hating all sorts of people, they also really hated Catholics. And the summary, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to read this because it's actually false information. So I don't want anybody taking my voice and running with that. But it denounces authority of Protestant government leaders. It is generally anti-Protestant. It is specifically anti-Mason. It talks about spying on Protestant families using Catholic women. It says that they're going to swear only allegiance to the Pope. It talks about making relentless war against heretics, Protestants, and Masons. It talks about not sparing anybody and all sorts of brutal murder, right? And only to obey the Pope or the Superior of the Brotherhood, so that they're not going to pay attention to the president if he's a Protestant, that kind of thing. But again, it's fake. It was circulated by the Klan, so stop using it. If I've seen people post it to Masonic groups, saying that hey, watch out for the Knights of Columbus. And whenever I've seen it posted, I am very quick to shut that down and say hey, please take this down. This is not true.
Man,
so
that's crazy. You just got to do a little Google search and you'll figure all that out for yourself. I'm sure people like to post stuff.
So next time I see it, I'm just going to type in all caps, fake news.
Spread by the Klan. So
hashtag sad.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's great.
That was solid.
The membership exploded, and I'm not kidding. It was crazy because they started in Connecticut in 1882 or whatever. 2 years after starting the order, they only had 460 members. 7 years after starting the order, they had 40,000 members. And 20 years after starting the order, they had 230,000 members. So we're talking,
that's what I'm talking about.
Every couple of times we check in on them, they've grown by a whole decimal place. At present day, they have more than 1.9 million members. And membership has grown every year for about 45 years straight.
Even to now,
for about 45 straight years, they have grown every year. They're one of the only fraternal organizations that has.
What? What? Hey, wait. beat back to truck up. How have they done that?
I don't know. I'm not involved in that organization, so I wouldn't know.
Well, that is something.
Some one-day classes, some membership drives.
Some Knights of Columbus and see, hey man, what you up to?
Well,
So,
I mean, yeah, regardless of one-day classes or if they even have degrees or whatever, just to get people to join, because, the Elks, all that, every organization I was aware of has been in decline, but that is something I'll definitely look into. That's interesting.
yeah. So the organization values charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. On the individual level, they are structured in councils, and each council of Knights of Columbus is presided over by a worthy Grand Knight. So when you are talking to an officer in the council, you precede their title with worthy. So there's a Grand Knight and a bunch of other officers, and all of them are worthy so-and-so. So the guy who runs the show is the worthy Grand Knight. The first degree, or the first order, sorry, they don't call them degrees, they call them orders. The first order teaches the first degree knight charity, and then the second order teaches them unity, and the third order teaches them fraternity. Once you have received the third order, you are considered a full Knight of Columbus. You don't have to proceed any further. You are entitled to all the privileges that any KOC has. There is an optional fourth order that teaches patriotism, and only about a fifth, it's actually less than a fifth, of the Knights of Columbus are also members of the fourth order. The fourth order does stuff like drill teams and parades and color guard. It's kind of like the Masonic commandery, but I know that's a really bad comparison. The fourth order is organized into assemblies, and the assemblies are presided over by a faithful navigator. So on the international level, they are governed by the Supreme Council, which is made up of members from every Knights of Columbus jurisdiction. They've got a couple of associated organizations. They're a member of the International Alliance of Catholic Knights, and that's an international organization of 15 Roman Catholic fraternities. That's just an umbrella for all the different organizations that do this kind of stuff. There are a couple of women's auxiliaries that are more or less loosely tied to them. There's the Daughters of Isabella, and then there's also the Catholic Daughters of the Americas. And they've got two youth groups, the Columbian Squires, which is for boys, and the Squire Roses, which is for girls. They're involved in charity, and they give over $175 million a year. They donate about 74 million volunteer hours. They're involved with Habitat for Humanity, co-donation programs, blood drives, scholarship programs for people going to religious vocations. They're involved in funding the Catholic Church's efforts towards peace in the Middle East. They're involved in the Special Olympics. They're involved in this thing called the Global Wheelchair Fund. They are involved in disaster relief for hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, etc. They also have a life insurance program. They have a long-term care insurance program. They've got disability insurance. And, as a bragging point for them, they have the most highly rated insurance program in America. They're also involved in evangelization for the Catholic Church via the Catholic Information Service, which is an organization that distributes booklets and correspondence courses. And they're also involved in politics, as they're not officially allowed to engage in partisan activity, but they can engage in topical activities. So they may not lobby for one party or another, but for example, they lobbied to have the words "under God" added to the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954. They lobbied to have Columbus Day recognized. One of the big issues they're campaigning against is gay marriage. They also do a lot of campaign against abortion. Famous members include President John F. Kennedy, Samuel Alito, Jeb Bush, Vince Lombardi, and Babe Ruth. You can learn more about the Knights of Columbus at www.kofc.org. So, Grant. Not Grant. Rhit. What you got on your plate? Tell us about OTO, why don't you?
My turn. OTO. That was another one that I didn't have any clue what it was. Of course, I'd heard about it, but didn't know the name of it. So OTO stands for, best I can pronounce it, Ordo Templi Orientis.
Actually, it's this.
Yeah, exactly. So OTO for short is what we'll be calling it. And it's believed it was formed between 1895 and 1906. There's nothing verifiable before 1904. So it's one of those things that's kind of clouded in controversy. So I didn't spend a lot of time with it. So founded by Carl Kellner with the assistance of Theodore Russ. And they had control of the organization. And when they originally formed it, they purchased the rights to the Rite of Memphis, the Rite of Meersem, of Freemasonry, along with the Rite of Swedenborg.
Whoa.
And that kind of formed the core of their order. It was very similar to Freemasonry until Aleister Crowley came along. And
boy.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's, he came along at exactly when it changed, because I just briefly looked through this on Wikipedia. It didn't exactly say on there. So somewhere between, Aleister Crowley took over in 1925. So somewhere between there and 1930, I think, is when all of that was formalized, although it had been happening along the way. Aleister Crowley was very influential before he became head of that order. He came back in and he took over, and he had his book of law that was dictated to him from his guardian angel, kind of similar to Joseph Smith and his looking into the hat. But their whole order after Aleister Crowley was based on that book of law. And the main law was, do what thy will shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. So his big thing was will. True will is the way he kind of explained it, which, everybody hears that, do what you will. And we immediately go to vices and, things that aren't necessarily the best things to be doing. And that's not what he's talking about. Because if you're following your true will, you rise above all that stuff.
So it's based on willpower for the individual within the strength of the fraternity. Is that kind of a...
Well, it's following that true will, and the whole, the first portion of it, is kind of finding that true will, and then being able to harness it, and follow it. Because, it's a tough thing for anybody to do. Now, exactly how they all go about that, there's not a whole lot on there. It's public information. He did form a Gnostic Catholic Church in 1913 that still goes on today. But the base tenet of OTO was to be guided by true will.
Isn't there? There's an OTO church or Gnostic church or whatever in Dallas, right? It's like driving distance.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, that'd be kind of an interesting group trip to make.
Pretty sure there's one in Austin as well. I'm not I briefly looked it up, but I'm almost positive I saw one in Dallas.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So, I didn't get into it very deep because I know Aleister Crowley, it rubs some people wrong hardcore.
Oh, man, that guy was metal.
He, and that's my thing, because I grew up around him, I had, my dad had books and stuff. He had books on everything. So I kind of look at it as a viewpoint of, I'm sure I'm not going to agree with him on everything, but there's going to be information that he's pulled out of research that's going to be beneficial. Am I going to spend a life studying Aleister Crowley? No, but you should have an open mind.
Yeah. I just like his nickname, the most wicked man that ever lived.
Yeah. Awesome. They were into some crazy stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no doubt.
Cool. So, Grant, do you have anything on Fraternal Forestry? I know you mentioned that.
Fraternal Forestry. Do have a little bit on Fraternal Forestry. there's not quite the plethora of information out there that there is maybe for some of these other groups. It is a fraternal organization that is currently based in Ontario, Canada. They trace their origins back to British Friendly Society, an organization designed around caring for the sick. They allegedly trace their origins back to the 14th century. So much like Freemasonry, there's a good amount of debate of when this got started, but it can be definitively traced back to the 18th century in the Royal Foresters. Membership was originally gained by combat, so it was actually a combat-based membership. So you first had to fight with quarterstaffs, then swords, and then finally with cudgels, which I'm not quite sure what that is.
I think that's cudgel. Yeah,
cudgels. It's
like a club. It's a big ugly club.
Oh yeah, that'd do some damage. That's y'all, you should Google that real quick. Anyone? Cudgels. Those are some bad looking hardware right there. They abandoned initiation by combat in the mid 18th century.
Lame.
I know.
Bummer.
Right? That would be so much fun.
So all we got to do is just start a Clandy Lodge that does that, right?
Right. And in or around 1878, as always of fate, the United States became an independent body of the AOF, as it's sometimes called. And as of 2014, there's a separate division in the UK now known as Forester Life. The expansion into Canada was in the late 18th century, attributed to a prominent doctor and community leader whose name I'm really not sure if I even want to try.
Go for it. That's part of the adventure.
Oren Haiteka.
You murdered that.
I know.
Can you paste that into the chat?
I texted the crud out of that one, man.
You got to paste that one into the chat. I'm curious as to how that's spelled now.
Oh yeah, hold on. Let's see. I'll get you down.
This way we can get all three of us murdering it individually in our own way.
Real quick, before we continue, I want each of you to try this and see what it comes up with. Rhit, you go first.
That's one name?
Yes, that is one name.
Oranataki.
Ornhiateka.
You murdered it.
Gabe's probably closest, though, because he had that little accent flair on there. Probably helped out quite a bit. He himself was an interesting guy. That name, by the way, means burning sky.
That's so badass.
Yeah, right. He's of Mohawk descent, and went under his baptized name, Peter Martin. Not as solid as Burning Sky. So Burning Sky was an Oxford scholar, successful CEO of a financial institution, and an athlete, a renowned athlete. So they continued on. They still exist today. What they're doing today is not quite as public. Their membership peak was 257,000 in 1906. They have broken off into various fraternal organizations, including the Ancient Order of United Workmen. They actually exist prominently today in the insurance industry, like many of the other fraternal organizations that we've seen. And we'll touch on this briefly. I have a little insight on that. And they extend their insurance benefits to working families. Women can also be admitted as full members, which is quite a call different from some of these organizations we discussed. They provide benefits to the deceased children of members, and they are active in their communities. So we've seen kind of real quick to get off topic just a little bit, but we've seen a lot of our organizational groups break off into insurance. And I think that's a natural evolution of groups that are founded to take care of the sick and the weary. If you think about it, effectively, members are putting their funds into a group with the expectation that the next generation of members will take care of widows and orphans. So at the heart of it, the money put into the group is expected to grow and be available to help out. Effectively, those are your foundings of insurance. So insurance is effectively founded on fraternal organizations, which is kind of interesting. One of the break-off societies of our fraternal forestry groups is the Foresters Friendly Society that exists today in Britain, has approximately 75,000 members, and is still active today. They are incorporated, and they're still running along. So they are also an insurance-based group. So they're highly active in the industry. Fraternal Forestry, not a whole wealth of information out there on it. My 2 hours of research today really just turned up financial institutions. Lots of financial institutions pop up under Foresters Financial, National Catholic Society of Foresters Financial Institution. Let's see. Yeah. So most of what pops up today regarding the organization is based around insurance.
Have you seen their tombstones?
I have not.
It's super cool. The foresters' tombstones, when you go to a cemetery, you want to look for the big, tall ones because they're about 4 feet high. They come to chest level at least, usually. Sometimes they get all the way up to like 6 feet high. But they are tree trunks made out of marble.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
I'm just looking at it now. I had thought to search for their tombstones.
If there's any listeners that want to take a look at what the Foresters' tombstones look like, my Instagram handle is Texan Mason. So, yeah, I've got a bunch of pictures there from the last time I went to a cemetery.
Instagram it.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm one of those weirdos that goes around cemeteries taking photos.
One of our live listeners, the name that we all butchered, is our pronunciation is Oranyateka. So yeah, we butchered it.
Oranyateka.
You murdered it again.
Oh man, just slapping that Texan all over it. All right.
Well, I never rightly cared much for correct pronunciation, given that the fraternal organization I'm a part of says operative instead of operative.
You know, if you can't pronounce it, why are you saying it? It's just... All right.
All right, Rhit, tell us a little bit about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
So when I Googled this one to check it out, the first thing that comes up is the Golden Dawn, and it's a political party in Greece. Ooh. And they're not very nice. So
Aren't they the neo-Nazis?
Definitely not. So they claim not to be, but do things that are. I don't know if they're full-fledged neo-Nazis now or whatever, but they do things like that. So,
that's no fun for anybody.
Yeah, so they robbed the name Golden Dawn, but we're talking about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This Golden Dawn, it's devoted to study and practice of the occult, metaphysics, and paranormal activities. What exactly they're talking about with paranormal, we'll see if I can explain it a little bit, but I mean that to me, I immediately go to like
aliens,
ghost chasers and stuff, the paranormal activity.
Yeah, Bigfoot. No?
Yeah, no. I think that refers more to just like premonitions and ghosts and things, which they do try to kind of commune with those and talk with those spirits, gods. I'm not for sure exactly what they would call them.
So we're not talking about aliens. I just want to make sure, because if it's aliens,
no,
I'm totally in.
That's another one. I think that's Scientology.
Well, that's a fun one.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, Red. I will quit interrupting you. I apologize.
No, that's all right. I mean, because their focused practice, or their main practice, was on theurgy, as best as I can pronounce it. And I had to, of course, look that one up. And that's invoking the action or presence of their gods or spiritual development. So that may lend towards the paranormal activity that we're talking about, as opposed to divination. They're communing directly, or trying to, through theurgy. So their founders were Freemasons, William Woodman, William Westcott, Samuel Mathers, and they were also members of the Societas, I can't even pronounce that, Rosicrucian in Anglia. So SRIA for short. We're murdering names all over the place tonight.
It just goes to show that we truly are a very Texan podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, pronunciation, it's a second thought.
Our two viewers in Oklahoma will understand. We got it.
Yeah. So William Westcott, he was the driving behind creating the order, and the other guys, how that goes, form a committee. He was the chairman. In the hierarchy and initiations of the order, they were based on Masonic lodges. So their degrees, not that they were word for word, but there was a lot of similarities. You're going to have junior warden, senior warden, worshipful master, on up kind of thing. If it's still that way, I'm not for sure, because it's kind of gone away and come back, and I don't know how closely it follows the original way they used to do it. So they would allow women to join. The first order, which I guess that's different, they didn't call them degrees, taught esoteric on Hermetic Kabbalah, self-awareness through the 4 classical elements, earth, wind, fire, all that stuff, as well as astrology, tarot divination, and geomancy.
Geomancy?
Which is like,
what is that?
Yeah, I think that's like chicken bones.
Well,
not specifically chicken bones.
No, wait,
but
geo is like what? Oh, is that rocks? Is that looking at rocks?
Yeah. It's the same concept. They'll throw stones.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
A little divination through that. Similar to the tarot, but with rocks. So, second order, or inner order as it was called, taught scrying. This is the best as I can pronounce it. And that's detecting messages or visions through a medium. So like the first example that came to mind was, again, Joseph Smith, who found the stone, Philosopher's Stone or whatever, put it in the top hat and looked in there and wrote the book for Mormonism. Was inspired through that medium. So that's essentially what scrying is. What that medium may be would be different for each person. They would also teach them astral travel and alchemy, which I've always been intrigued by. Astral travel. There's a lot of people that really claim if you work at it, you can do it. It's always intrigued me.
Then you don't get the frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, exactly. So when you got to the third order, they would teach you how to commune with the chiefs, as they called them, of Order 2. So where you would be getting those messages through a medium or through astral travel or through alchemy, you would just go directly to them. and circumvent all of that stuff.
Oh, that's super cool and also like super strange. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around that.
No, and when I was growing up, I knew of Aleister Crowley. I knew that he was really into the tarot. And so I naturally thought he was a big member of the Golden Dawn. I might even have the thought that he created it somewhere when I was real young. But he was initiated, but it was amidst a lot of controversy. He became good buddies with the guy running the show. Mm-hmm. And he was denied membership and had rank and said, "Oh, forget y'all. I'm initiating him anyways," kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's when he was like, "I'm out." Aleister Crowley, he left and went to the OTO.
Oh, that's really interesting. So he was kind of super rubbing people the wrong way in all sorts of ways, even when he was still around.
You just go read the page on the OTO, and you'll see why he was so controversial on what he was teaching. I mean, because it was seriously controversial stuff, even back then, even today. And so he was a guy that you had to have a mind open with a hatchet. It's so open to tolerate the way he would teach things or do things, So they had temples all over, grew real big. The last one closed in 1978. And apparently, when I was doing a little more Googling on it, they've reopened it, I guess is the best way. Somebody purchased the rights of that order and now have the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is going once again, and you can sign up for the first couple of orders online and they mail you the packets. You go through it. Eventually, I think you get to some initiation process, but
that doesn't feel like it has the same level of coolness as the other one.
No, somebody's being haunted by Aleister Crowley, I'm sure.
Fraternity by mail. You just
you get that. I hear that a lot because there's one we'll talk about here in a minute that specifically gets the name Enlightenment by mail. And, to each their own is what I say,
Cool.
Some folks get a lot out of that. So while it doesn't feel the same for me as getting something through the mail, maybe just what somebody else needs.
Yeah. Well, I guess the big advantage to that is that it does free up a lot more time.
Yeah.
Well, there's some fraternity you can do by mail, writing each other handwritten letters, stuff like that. I know, Rhit, I got one from you after my EA that meant a lot. I still have it. So.
No, and they send out workbooks and things that you have to do and exercises. I've seen some of them for the other order, and it's really interesting. Research you've got to do, papers you've got to turn in. So not only does it save on time for everybody, but when you're a new organization budding, you don't have the capital for buying all these buildings like Freemasonry's done, which is kind of pinching us right now, having to pay all the, building fees and electricity. But it makes it a lot easier and a lot cheaper to get that information out there. So you're either going to get it or not.
That's cool.
That's the skinny on the Golden Dawn.
Rock and roll. Let's talk about the Oddfellows. So, the specific Oddfellows organization that I'm going to be touching on, because there are multiple of them, is the Independent Order of Oddfellows, and that is the American organization. In the United Kingdom, they have the Grand United Order of Oddfellows, and then they also have a splinter organization, which is the Independent Order of Oddfellows Manchester Unity, and that is actually the quote-unquote parent organization of IOOF. So they're the ones that we came from, kind of. And then for American people of color, because blacks and other races for a long time were not allowed to join the Oddfellows, there is also the Grand United Order of Oddfellows in America. Now, they are not strictly non-white or anything like that, but historically speaking, that's kind of how it's been. So you have that kind of mainstream versus Prince Hall divide, and you see that in Oddfellows as well. And you'll find out why in a bit. But for the sake of simplicity, we're talking about the IOOF/Independent Order of Oddfellows. Their motto is friendship, love, and truth, and you'll often see that represented by 3 chain links, one usually white, one usually blue, and one usually red, with FLT in the center of each chain link. They are 197 years old, so they're coming up on their bicentennial, which is really cool. And their membership, in order to be a member, you can be a man or a woman. You must believe in a supreme being, and the language that they use points towards a creator god of some kind. And you usually, depending on the jurisdiction, have to be 16 or older. They had lodges, Oddfellows lodges, unofficially in New York City in the early 1800s. And then officially, Washington Lodge No. 1 was chartered in 1819, and then affiliated with the Independent Order of Oddfellows Manchester Unity in 1820. So they kind of started up, and then they said, okay, this is the grand organization that we're joining. So in 1842, the American lodges split in, and that was because the ritual was being changed by the British lodges without the agreement or input of any kind from the American lodges. And so just like a very familiar decision that was made not even 100 years before that, the Americans said, we're not playing this game. So they left.
America.
Right, and they renamed themselves the Independent Order of Oddfellows. They began accepting women in 1851, which is super progressive. They were the first fraternal organization to do that. They were nearly destroyed in the Civil War. Most lodges were near or did die, but they came back real strong starting in the 1860s, and from the 1860s to the 1910s, they were the largest fraternal organization in the United States. We're talking, you're more likely to have found an Oddfellow at that point in time than a Mason. There were more than us. The peak membership, as far as we know, their peak membership was 2.7 million in 1921, and it's been steadily declining it's steadily declined since then until I think the 70s or so. But they removed, and I remember that I said that there was that black-white divide or white-non-white divide. They removed the whites-only clause in 1971. So that's real recent. That's within lifetimes of a lot of people. So in 1979, there were only 243,000 members. So we're talking, what is that? Like 56 years? In 56 years, they went from 2.7 million to 243,000. They've been bouncing back, though. In the 21st century, they've seen a bit of a resurgence, and they've currently got around 600,000 members. So they've been coming back bit by bit. So their values are friendship, love, truth, faith, hope, and charity, and universal justice. They're structured into lodges, and the lodge is based on friendship, love, and truth. The first degree teaches friendship. The second degree teaches fraternal love. The third degree teaches truth. And each lodge is presided over by the Noble Grand. After you have received your third degree in the Oddfellows, you are eligible to join the encampment. And the encampment teaches faith, hope, and charity. And it's what we would call an appendant body. I don't know if they use that exact terminology, but that's what we would call it. The first degree is the Patriarch. The second degree is the Golden Rule. And the third degree is Royal Purple. and it's presided over by the chief patriarch or the chief matriarch if the leader is a female during that year. After a person has joined the lodge and has joined the encampment, and they are in good standing with both, right? So if you want to join the encampment, you have to be in good standing with your lodge. If you want to join the patriarch's militant, you have to be in good standing with your lodge and with your encampment. And this was founded during the Civil War. It's chivalric, so kind of similar to commandery again. Something similar, again, bad analogy, but for those of us, that are kind of familiar with that, a little bit like commandery. It's organized into cantons instead of encampments or lodges. And there's only one degree, that of the chevalier, and it's presided over by a commandant. So on the state and national and international level, they have the regional grand lodges, which preside over the jurisdictional grand lodges. So, for example, there's a Grand Lodge of the United States, which has 51 state grand lodges in it. And then, there's one for Africa that has two African countries' grand lodges in there. They've got some associated organizations. The Daughters of Rebecca originally started as a women's auxiliary and now is open to men and women, just like the Oddfellows is. So I think they're just called the Rebeccas now. There's also the junior lodges, right? And that's kind of like DeMolay, I guess. And there is this organization called the Ancient Mystic Order of Samaritans, which is similar to it's similar to Shrine, but it's based on the story of Xerxes. And there's a women's auxiliary to that called Ladies of the Orient. So the Oddfellows are involved. What?
Is that the Xerxes, the Persian king?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat stuff. So the Oddfellows are involved in scholarships and low-interest student loans. They do things like make an annual pilgrimage to the Tomb of Unknown Soldier in whichever country they're in. So in Canada, they go to the Canadian Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. In the United States, they go to D.C. They spend over $775 million in relief projects every year. They run an operation called SOS Children's Village, which provides orphan homes internationally. They have a program called Living Legacy, which involves tree planting. They have an arthritis foundation. They support vision care and research. And they also have the Oddfellow and Rebecca homes for the elderly and orphans. Famous members include Charlie Chaplin, Wyatt Earp, Anson Jones, who was the last president of the Republic of Texas, Charles Lindbergh, Sir John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada, and he was also a Mason, President Ulysses S. Grant, President Warren Harding, President Rutherford Hayes, President William McKinley, President Franklin Roosevelt, and my favorite one, this guy called Albert Pike, who was the past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Arkansas of IOOF. And so we best know him as the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction, and basically the granddaddy of modern Scottish Rite Masonry. But before he was ever a Mason, he was an Oddfellow. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Huh,
and
yeah.
You can learn more about the Oddfellows at www.ioof.org.
So, did I hear you say they gave out $776 million a year?
Yeah, that
benefit?
was last year. That was last year.
So, how much is that a day? It's pretty much the same as us. Is that like the statistic between all fraternities like that? $2 million a day in charity.
Let's see. They hit $2.1 million a day, so they're not quite to the level. We do a little bit over $3 million a day.
Sweet. So
isn't that incredible though? Like that's still like $2.1 million a day is crazy. That's a lot of goodwill.
It's a lot of goodwill. It's a good organization. If you have never Googled Oddfellow catalog, like the one I looked at was from the 20s. It's a hoot. The things that you would buy for their lodge or whatever it was, for their initiations or I don't know if they used them or just had pranks with them, but it had like the electric chair, the bucking goat that made sounds as you bucked it. I mean, it's some cool stuff.
I think the bucking goat was originally a Masonic thing.
It was in the Oddfellows catalog.
Okay.
Because you're talking about, there was probably 15 different varieties. You could get the simple one for a couple of dollars, all the way up to the one that had on the railroad tracks you see with the handle that goes up and down.
Oh, that's so cool.
And as you pushed it down, it pushed the bag down that made the goat sound at the same time.
That's great.
Yeah, it's interesting. You should check it out. And if you ever make it to Grand Lodge, they have a real cool setup in the museum showing some of the Oddfellows degree work.
Now, are you talking about the Oddfellows Grand Lodge or our Grand Lodge?
Our Grand Lodge.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. It's somebody's drawings of it. You know, it's got like a guy being dipped in water and different stuff, but it's really cool setup.
You know, there is an Oddfellows Lodge here in town. You want to go join with me? That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's right down the road. I actually know a member very well.
Really?
Yep.
That'd be worth checking out. One of the cool things I've seen is that in a lot of towns, they'll have the Oddfellows Lodges in the same building as the Masonic Lodges. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Man, that's actually a good idea for both of them. You know, who's got the better building, we all move in. We're putting so much goodwill out there, but we're strangling ourselves with real estate, keeping up with it all. You know, not that we pay out the nose in taxes, but just the upkeep. Y'all have seen the lodges, you know, so It's interesting.
So do you want to tell us about some of the Rosicrucian fraternal organizations?
Oh, yes, I do.
Ooh,
so
this is one you like a lot.
I do. I've always been drawn to it. So when I started looking this up, I started reading through a Wikipedia page that talks to Rosicrucianism as a cultural movement. And that's really where this all starts. As far as Rosicrucian groups that we have today, it came out of that cultural movement in the early 17th century. So during that time, you know, there was peace, there was order, there was a middle class, if you will, to where people were able to research and bring things to light. I mean, that's where we had a lot of the good inventions come out during that time. So the Rosicrucian movement, though, was inspired several publications that were based on the Order of the Rosy Cross from the 1400s. So that's kind of in contention, too, whether that actually existed or not. Whether these publications were parables and not actually truth, because in one of the book it specifically states that we teach in parables. So it's kind of a, you know, whether it's actually been out there or not, that's a little more research that I didn't have time to do. So between 1606, though, and 1616, 2 anonymous manifestos were published, first in Germany and later throughout Europe, which inspired many to search out esoteric teachings. So the first one printed was here we go, murdering again, the Fama Fraternitatis.
Oh,
which
you
is
got to
the
type
fame.
that one into the chat. I want to see that.
Yeah, I want to give that a shot.
It is. It stands for Fame of the Brotherhood. So the other one is Confessio Fraternitatis, the Confession of the Brotherhood. So those manifestos, they were attributed, you know, teachings from the Rosy Cross. And most of them, like I said, didn't take it literally. You know, they regarded it as allegorical statements.
Oh, man, the full title of this is crazy.
Did you find it?
Yeah, the Fama Fraternitatis. Right, so like I looked it up on Wikipedia and the full title is Fama Fraternitatis Rosicrucis oder die Bruderschaft des Ordens der Rosenkreuzer. So it's half of it's in Latin and the other half's in German.
So there you go. So the Fama or Fama Fraternitatis, it presented a legend of a German doctor who was a mystic philosopher referred to as Frater CRC, and supposedly later identified as Christian Rosenkreuz.
Christian Rosenkreuz, I think is how you say it. Right?
There you go. That's the German we needed. So at that time in the 1400s, he gathered a small circle of friends and disciples and founded the Rosicrucian order. And this passed on, you know, it was a small group. I think it said no more than 8 members.
That's small, okay.
Yeah, so in the 1400s, what they were talking about wasn't kosher with the church. So it had to be tight knit. So the 8 members each were a doctor and a sworn bachelor, which is kind of crazy.
A sworn bachelor?
Yep. Each member undertook an oath to heal the sick without payment, to maintain a secret fellowship, to find a replacement for himself before he died. And it continued this way for 3 generations between 15 and 1600, which during the 1600s, they felt society, you know, they could talk about these things. So it was released through these manifestos that the public, you know, they wouldn't come hunt them down with their heads kind of. So David Stetson, which I've never read anything by him, but this is what Wikipedia said, that he claims Rosicrucianism influenced Masonry in Scotland as it began to emerge there. And I can't say that I disagree, because it's what led me to even start looking into Rosicrucianism. Was really? Masonry. Yeah. The teachings and all that kind of led me down that path. So whether it did or didn't, there's some similarities there. Let's see, what was the other one I have here? Some say the degree Croix was inspired by Rosicrucianism.
The degree what?
Don't really know. The Knight of the Rose Croix, which I think is a part of an appendant body.
That is Scottish Rite.
That's what I was thinking. So, not being a Scottish Rite Mason, I wasn't for sure. Yeah. So, well, fast forward.
If Brad does his way, you might be soon.
Yeah, that's because, you know, I never knew a lot about any of this, because it took my dad to almost pull my teeth to get me to join Freemasonry. And it was one of the best things I ever did, but I just never continued to join. And my grandfather kind of...
You'll have fun with it, I'm sure.
I know I will. And I'm going to join the Scottish Rite at some point, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, you can wear funny hats with everybody. Yeah. Oh, and I just looked it up. It is the 18th degree.
There you go.
That's the 18th degree in Scottish Rite.
So when you fast forward to the 19th and 20th century, that's when groups that we're familiar with started popping up. And apparently they can be broken into 3 categories. There's the esoteric Christian Rosicrucians, which I believe that's a group, the name of the group. There's Masonic Rosicrucianism, the Societas Rosicruciana, and then there's the initiatory Rosicrucianism, Golden Dawn, Ancient Mystic Order of the Rosicrucians, or AMROC, which most people are familiar with it that way.
Yeah,
is the AMROC, which that's the one I hear all the time.
I'm just going to call that Amorc.
Amorc, there you go.
I don't think that's the preferred way to call it, but that's just easier to say.
Amrock. It's another one of those that you just mail by enlightenment. And I know a few people that are members of that really enjoy it.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, it's an interesting group for sure.
Yeah. And so are you a member of any one of these, or?
No. That's what I say. I just, to join them, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And I've just never taken the time to join anything. You know, I've had such a good time researching and kind of figuring out which way I want to go, which I may very well join one of those in the future. That's really
one of the Rosicrucian ones. Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause that's always intrigued me.
Well, if you're looking for appendant bodies to join, I can, and this is not related to discussion necessarily, but I'm really enjoying Chapter, and I think you would like some of this. It's pretty great stuff.
I know I would. I think everybody would benefit from it. I know Blue Lodge would if we kind of tie it all back together like it should be. And I don't think it's a bad thing either for people that go to the Scottish Rite and are like, hey, this is where I fit. I love this. And they spend 90% of their time there. Yeah. That's a great thing as well. Somebody has to do it. Same thing with the York Rite side.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you find, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of was excited about the subject here of these alternative fraternal organizations, because if you find that you like the Knights of Pythias, or that you're really passionate about the Oddfellows, or you find a Rosicrucian organization that really tickles your fancy, go do that. Nobody's telling you have to stay in Blue Lodge, or nobody's telling you, and if you're not already in Blue Lodge, nobody's telling you have to join Blue Lodge. Go find something, whatever that is for you. And so whether it's an independent body within the Masonic family, or if it's a totally different organization that happens to have fraternal aspects, man, that's cool. Go do that. It's, we want to encourage people to find light wherever they can.
Yeah, go do you. Kind of like we talked about last week. Find something that works for you and go at it 100 miles an hour. And that's how I see it. If you're going to do something, go at it. If you're going to get into something and half-ass it, well, don't get into it.
Yeah. No, and I think we've just scratched the surface on groups that's out there. I mean, because I think you see a common goal in most of those is to help other people.
Right. And there are a lot of well-known groups we didn't touch on tonight. Elks. Elks? We didn't touch on Rotary. There's a lot of other groups we didn't.
There's a bunch of groups that we didn't touch on that we'll have to save for a later date, because they're just all really interesting in their own right. Whether it's the animal fraternities or the other service organizations, there's a wealth of other stuff to find. So we'll have to do maybe not a part 2 necessarily, but a different focus. So that'll be kind of fun to do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this was a fun one, guys. Are we ready to go to events?
All right. So in events around us and local to us, Texas events. April 8th, Longview Lodge 404 in Longview is hosting a combination blood drive fish fry. The blood drive will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and the fish fry will be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The blood drive is for the Gift of Life program, and the fish fry is for the Longview Masonic Library and Museum. On April 29th, Lions Junior Lodge is doing a custom car and bike show in Austin at 10 a.m. It's at the George Washington Carver Museum and Cultural Center in Austin. Entry is $25, registration is at 10 a.m., and judging begins at high 12. There are door prizes and a free t-shirt with entry. So if you want more info, call 512-845-5549. That'll be your contact for that event. In Tarrant County and nearby, April 8th, Lovekin Lodge 669 is putting on a scholarship golf tournament. The tournament is taking place at Netches Pines de Boldy. Registration is at 8 a.m. Shotgun start is at 9 a.m. The cost for a 4-person team is $300, and the cost for a corporate team is $500. There's going to be multiple contests, and there's going to be several levels of sponsorship available. For more details, please check out the Lovekin Lodge 669 AF and AM Facebook page. On April 8th, Webb Lodge 1454 is putting on an outdoor Master Mason's degree. Western attire is encouraged, and bringing your own chair and your own apron is required. The Hella Shrine Knights of Mecca degree team is conferring. The location is 32900 US 281 in Lipan, Texas, which is 10.25 miles south of I-20 on the east side of US 281. In the case of bad weather, the degree will be relocated to Harmony Lodge 592 in Morgan Mill. Lunch is at 11:30 a.m. and the degree itself is at 1 p.m. Suggested lunch donation is $15. Help a brother out. Webb Lodge is in need of a multi-passenger all-terrain vehicle, so if you have one that you can loan out, you get to pilot and everything when you're there. Nobody's taking it away from you. But we're going to have some brothers that maybe can't make it all the way out on their own. It makes life a lot easier for everybody. And I'm going to be there, so, come join me. If you want to RSVP to this, you're going to get in contact with Brother Senior Warden Mark Myers at weblodge1454@gmail.com. That's WEBB Lodge 1454 at Gmail. You can also call him at 817-253-0964. At April 13th, Burleson Lodge 649 is going to put on the first of 2 Master Mason's degree, with the second occurring on April 20th. The meal for each is at 6 p.m. The degree begins at 7 p.m. If you can make it to one or both, they would love that. For more info, and to let their secretary, Brother Rodney Beckham, know that you're coming, please give him a call at 817-648-1373. So, April 13th, Handley Lodge 1140 is having their stated meetings on the second Thursday of every month at 7:30 p.m. If they still have the traveling gavel and the mega gavel by then, bring 7 or more brothers to their meeting and claim it for your lodge. If you do claim it, remember to email the 64th District at 64th.org with an update as to who's got it and how many brothers you had, that kind of thing. They've got a form on the website. So on May 20th, and I know this is a little in advance because we usually only do things about a month in advance, but I wanted to toss this out because the tickets are still on sale, but they're going quick. The Oklahoma Indian Degree Team is coming to Garland, Texas. The MWSA of Masonic District No. 9 and East Fork Lodge 650 are organizing and hosting a Master Mason's degree, which will be conferred by the Oklahoma Indian Degree Team. Again, the date is Saturday, May 20th at 1 p.m. following the 11:30 a.m. lunch. The location is the Black Horse Barn at Hella Shrine, 2121 Rowlett Road in Garland, Texas. Tickets are $25, which includes lunch. The seats are limited to 500. You're going to get your tickets on eventbrite.com, which is eventbrite.com. You can also reach out to them at eastforklodge.org/Facebook. The event is, of course, only open to Master Masons because it's a Master Mason's degree. Please bring your dues card and a photo ID. For more info, call 972-670-6758 or 214-533-5659. And I'm going to that. So, just like the Outdoor Degree in Webb Lodge, come join me on May 20th in Garland, Texas. So for local events, and by local I mean real local because they're in our temple at 1100 Henderson Street in Fort Worth, on Tuesday, April 11th, Texas Council is putting on the Royal Master and Select Master's degrees. Please come to that. I'm one of the candidates. So, as with all the Texas chapter and council events, this is going to be in the 3rd floor Red Room. So if you are a Royal and Select Master, come on by. It'll be great.
Doing everything, Gabe.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about all these appendant bodies and stuff, and I'm getting all up in there. So, Thursday, April 13th, Fort Worth Lodge is putting on a Fellcraft degree. Come join us as we seek further light. The Saturday, April 15th, Worth Commandery is putting on the orders. It's going to be an all-day affair, and the degrees start at 8 a.m. after breakfast, and I was told they'll conclude at around 4 p.m. I'm going to be one of the candidates, and so if you're a Sir Knight, please come on by, watch the orders, and greet a bunch of new Knights Templar. Monday, April 17th, Fort Worth 148 is putting on a Master Mason's degree at 6. Please come join us. It's going to be awesome. We love master's degrees. We know you do too. On Monday, April 24th, Brother Roberto Sanchez is coming to the temple at 6 p.m. to speak on the true Masonic experience. Brother Sanchez is a Masonic speaker and author who's lectured all over the U.S., Canada, Latin America, and Europe. This event is open to all regular Masons, including entered apprentices and fellowcrafts, so please come and join us by all means.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
6 p.m.
6 p.m., yes. And on Monday, May 1st, Fort Worth 148 is putting on a Master Mason's degree at 6, so please come and join us. Like the 17th, we're going to have one on May 1st. We like to spend the time and do each brother individually, so we got to spread them out a little bit. Our schedule right now is super crazy, but that's part of the fun. So, as always, Fort Worth 148 meets on the second Monday of each month, which this month is the 10th, and we meet at 1100 Henderson Street in Fort Worth, Texas. And that's a 7 p.m. meeting preceded by a 6 p.m. dinner.
Awesome. That's a lot of events.
It is.
No, I hope to see a lot of people out at Roberto Sanchez. His talk on the true Masonic experience sounds very intriguing.
That'll be a lot of fun to go and listen to.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get there a little bit early. We always get there a little bit early. Get to the elevator, punch 3, and we'll be. So.
Yeah, there will be a bunch of people already there.
Come on up.
Right on. So tonight's closing quote is from Brother President Theodore Roosevelt in an address to the YMCA in New York City in 1900. The spirit of brotherhood recognizes of necessity both the need of self-help and also the need of helping others in the only way whichever ultimately does great good, that is, of helping them to help themselves.
Nice.
Good one.
Teach a man to fish.
So guys, if you want to get in contact with us, you can reach us at www.fortworth148.org or at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook, or email us at info148@fortworth148.org.
Guys, I sincerely enjoyed your company tonight. Thank you. That was a good discussion, and I'm glad we did it.
I hope we learned somebody something. Rhit Moore signing off.
Grant Gates signing off.
Gabriel Jagush signing off.